Well, ladies and gentlemen, and all variations thereupon, I was going to make myself a Lord of the Rings style cloak, but unfortunately, due to the dreaded virus and Brexit complicating matters, I haven't been able to receive my wool that I've ordered, which means I'm going to have to create something else in the meantime. And, as you can probably see over there, I do have a lot of excess cardboard that I've been storing up, so I'm going to have to create some cardboard projects. And what better idea is there than to use up some of that cardboard that I have stored ever since I've moved in. So I'm going to create some sort of box out of the cardboard, but I'm not just a regular old box. I thought I'd make myself a dice box. Now if you take something like a D6, it's already a box shape, so that's going to be fairly easy to make into a box. But something like a D10, well, that's very unstable by its very nature, and exactly how are you going to open it? It's a bit of an engineering challenge, so it could be a fun project. So why don't you join me as we use up some of my excess cardboard and create some dice boxes. Okay, first step, prepare your cardboard. The first thing we're probably going to want is the simplest one, which is going to be a D6, which is just the square. So I'm going to need 6 squares that I can just stick together in a box shape. Simple enough. What I've got here is corrugated cardboard. This is just an Amazon box, and it's obviously, because it's used for shipping, it's good and strong, but we'll probably want something on the surface, because trying to decorate on the top of corrugated cardboard leaves a texture which isn't necessarily what we want. So I get straight right angles. Okay, so there's the different pieces, 6 equal squares, and the way we're going to attach them is with tape. Ideally, in order to make it a strong box, you'd have some sort of mechanical joint where the pieces interlock. We're just going to use tape because, well, it gives us the option to change things if we want to, and because we're going to have it on an extra layer on the outside, we're going to stick the tape on the outside of the box because it's going to be then covered, so you won't see it. Just make sure it's that. There's the other piece there. Make sure the joins are lined up. When it comes to the last one, we don't want to seal up every side. We're just going to place tape on one edge. That way we have a lid. The D8 consists of equilateral triangles, so get out your protractor and make sure the internal angles measure 60 degrees. The D4 consists of the same triangles, but half as many. D4 we're going to really stick down the top. Because we're going to cut it off. And create a separate lid. The D12 requires slightly more precision. I would recommend making it slightly larger than the other boxes, as the internal angles need to be precisely 108 degrees. Gently scoring along the internal pentagon will allow the others to bend up into place. The D20 is once again made of equilateral triangles. What I'd recommend in this instance is a combination of cutting out the triangles and scoring along some of the internal edges in order to create pairs of triangles. And now we come to the most challenging of the dice, the D10 or percentile dice. This dice is not ideal for making a box out of. It's not stable in virtually any direction unless it's standing like this on one end, but the thing with that is if you put too much in and too much of the weight goes forward, it's going to try tipping that way, and this edge is designed specifically to not be stable so that it'll roll over onto one of the numbers. So it's going to be a difficult one to work out exactly how to turn into the box. But not only that, if you look carefully, these triangular areas are not actually perfect triangles. They're rounded at the bottom, and we've got this rounded band going around it. Not only that, if you look at the top, it looks like a 5-pointed sort of star shape coming from the centre of a circle. But if you try to draw that in a 2D shape and then bend it up, it's not going to work. Simply because trying to transfer a 2D shape onto a 3D surface, the angles always mess up. All the internal angles on the top of what the triangular pieces are is 50 degrees rather than the 60 you'd expect. So in order to make this as easy as possible, we're going to draw out 5 triangles with a 50-degree point, with the points all touching together in the centre. We're going to then use a compass to trace out the curved bottom. When sticking the two halves together, make sure they're slightly offset and with a slight gap between them. The next step is to prevent the corrugation from showing through when we paint it. To do this, we're going to cover it in a layer of newspaper and a mixture of PVA glue and water. When this dries, it will dry hard, and then that should stop the corrugation from showing through. Where the boxes have lids, we're going to insert small pieces of card in order to prevent them from sliding off. After the night, all this is dried up, and because I've used PVA, it's gone hard. The idea of it was to put a surface on that's going to be relatively smooth so you don't see the corrugation coming through, and because it's gone hard, it means that when we paint over it, we're not going to see the corrugated lines as much. I suspect we're still going to see some of it, but if you want to make sure it's completely out, either you put a thin layer of cardboard over the top, or uncorrugated cardboard, or you put extra layers of PVA and newspaper. But I'm a little bit more pressed for time because things are hectic at work. When painting with lighter colours, it will probably take several thick coats of paint before you can prevent the print from showing through. While I was waiting for that to dry, I drew out several small designs to stick onto the surface of the dice. On one of the dice I decided to use dwarven runes. This says 5. For the D10 I decided to make it a steampunk dice, so that by adding cogs I can weight one end to prevent the roll. And there we have it, from a simple two-tone D4 to a D6 inspired by Warhammer 40k, guaranteed to be approved by the Inquisition. We have a dwarven D8 with golden runes. The D10 didn't turn out quite as well as I'd like, but it's functional with its steampunk design. The D12 is deliberately damaged and distorted as part of the Eldritch horror theme. And finally, the D20, with a more elven and naturalistic look, perhaps something more fitting of a druid. All in all, I think the dice turned out quite well, or rather the boxes. Considering it was a project done with a tight turnaround, I think it turned out quite well, if I do say so myself.